Hi everyone, welcome back. My name is Eileen Chevalier and I created the typewriter alphabet. And today with the flashcards, we are going to look at poison and medicine. Have you ever had to take medicine and been warned not to take too much? Why? What would happen? Medicine's supposed to help you, right? So why can't you take too much? In this lesson, we'll look closer at plants that can both heal and kill. It's all about delivery and dosage. So, for today's lesson, you're going to want to have your typewriter alphabet flashcards. The one that we're going to look at specifically today is the X card. I know I cheated. It does not start with an X. It starts with an F. But this is one of my favorite plants. And it has an X in the name, and it's really hard to find plants that start with the letter X. So we went with this guy. And the other book that you can look at is Wicked Plants, subtitled The Weed That Killed Lincoln's Mother and Other Botanical Atrocities. This book is not for the faint of heart, so watch out. All right, before we get started, I'm going to read you a definition like I always do. So pull out your journal. Poison, substance that causes physical harm or death. Now, if you remember from our last lesson, which was protection, the definition was protect, to keep safe from harm or injury. So I want you to think about the definitions of protect and poison and how they relate to one another throughout this lesson, because we're talking about poison and medicine, and sometimes medicine is a poison. So I don't know if you've ever seen, it happens in movies a lot, where someone's like having a heart attack and then they like get the AFib machine and it sends this powerful jolt of electricity through you. So if you're basically dead, it's really helpful and will help your heart to start working. But if you were to do that on site, like just right now for me, like if someone came and did that to me right now, what would that do to me? Right? So that would not be a helpful thing for me to do on a normal, everyday kind of basis. But if I were in a particular situation with a particular need, that would be the thing that would save my life. So the tricky thing about poison and medicine is that there's a fine line there and it's all risky, right? So let's read the X flashcard first. So this is a picture of foxglove. Super beautiful, has excellent example of nectar guides. Many plants are used to make medicines, but some plants can also be poisonous. All parts of the foxglove plant are poisonous. They contain a chemical that changes how human hearts beat. Doctors can use that same chemical in specific amounts to make a medicine that will help people whose heart isn't beating correctly. So obviously the doctors aren't manufacturing the chemical, but they know how to prescribe it correctly for patients who need a particular amount of that medicine. So let's read our question. What is the scientific name for foxglove? So if you remember, on every card, we have the common names and scientific names there at the very bottom. So foxglove, and then digitalis purpurea. And the purpurea just means purple. And the digitalis, in Latin, these are your digits, right? So your fingers are your digits. And this, sometimes plants are named for what they look like. Sometimes plants are actually named for the medicine that's in them. So in this particular one, since we know that it has to do with the heartbeat, do you think that the finger is what's driving it? Do you think it's named after the medicine, or do you think it's named after something else? So if you think about the shape of the foxglove, it actually looks kind of like a thimble, something that you would put your finger in to sew with to protect your finger. So that is how digitalis got its name. How does this relate to the name of the chemicals found in foxglove that are used for medicine? And I kind of already gave it away. digoxin, maybe that's how they pronounce it, or digitoxin. So there's the chemical name is named after the plant, or is the plant named after the chemical name? So the Latin word for finger is digit, and the foxglove got its scientific name because it looks like a thimble. So which came first, the scientific name or the name of the chemical used in the medicine, and how do you know? So I've just told you about that etymology. So what do you think? Next up are all medicinal plants. Even common ones like turmeric, tea tree, and lavender, also capable of being poisonous. Are all plants capable of being poisonous? What would happen if you took too many vitamins at one time? So a couple days ago, we were actually joking about this, and my daughter said, death by celery. And then when we were doing the protection lesson, we learned about how celery can actually cause phototoxicity. So theoretically, you could definitely have harm or injury by celery. But my daughter was pointing out if you didn't eat anything but celery, then you would get sick and die eventually. And so it would be death by celery. But obviously, that's not like a real life situation. So in a real life situation, how could you get too much of something and that be toxic to your body? And these things like turmeric, tea tree, and lavender, those are all incredibly helpful things. I've definitely used them all, and they're amazing. But if you used them in the wrong way or at the wrong time, then what would that do to you? So just like with the foxglove, the digitalis, if you used the medicine that's derived from the foxglove plant in the correct way, it gives you life. And if you use it incorrectly, like if you were just to eat some foxglove, then what would that do to you? So if you took too many vitamins at once, what do you think would happen? You know, they say everything in moderation, and I think that's because there are things that you absolutely need in your body. You have to have salt, right? But if all you did was consume a bunch of salt, what would happen to you? Your body, first of all, would try to expel all of the salt that you were taking in. It would be really toxic for your body. But if you didn't have enough salt, then you would also die because your body needs that. So there's a balance, which is really interesting. In the protection lesson, we learned that being poisonous is a protective trait. Many common plants are poisonous, but there are very few that we currently use as medicine. What would be obstacles and benefits to discovering the potential medicinal qualities of poisonous plants? Is there a safe way to test new medicines? So obviously, the human beings are interested in coming up with new medicines because we have a lot of diseases. We have new diseases that arise. How do we deal with all of these things? So there's a lot of potential, right? Like we already know about foxglove, but maybe we don't know about some amazing life-saving medicine that could be made from a different plant. So what are the risks and the benefits to that? And how do we as human beings weigh those risks and benefits and decide how to proceed? So you can read about how clinical trials get done now and what the philosophy behind that would be. These are like kind of more philosophical questions, but with botany, it's a huge issue because so much of what how we heal our bodies comes from plants. I mean, obviously you can just keep your body healthy to begin with plants, but then if you have a certain condition or you have been exposed to something that's hurting you, then you can use plants to heal yourself. So how much are we willing to risk in order to find something that could be potentially life-saving? Anyway, it's a good mental exercise for you to think about. In your journal, there are a couple things you can do. The first is to create a poster promoting plant safety. What are some ways that you can stay safe around plants? Think about hiking in the woods, Maybe there's some poison ivy. Think about house plants that don't want to be touched. These are a little dangerous. Dumb cane. I don't have house pets, but I know that there are like a list of plants that you should never have as house plants if you have cats or dogs, because they're poisonous to cats or dogs, even though they're not poisonous to human beings. So what are those things? Like maybe you want to make a poster just about dogs or just about cats and say, hey, watch out for these things if you have these animals. And being careful around flower arrangements. Now I know this seems a little silly, but you get the flower arrangements and you want to cut them and make them look nice, and then maybe they're sitting somewhere and the petals are falling and the pollen is falling. And is that always healthy? Are there plants that you want to be careful of if they are in a flower vase in your house? Do you want to make sure they're not in the kitchen? Do you want to make sure they're not where babies will be crawling around on the ground and picking things up and eating them? There are some flashcards that you can look at. So some good ones are B, H, L, and X, of course. So second project you could do is to read some chapters in the Wicked Plants book and create a wanted poster for a plant that you find particularly strange or terrible. There are some really horrendous ones in here. Identify the plant name, do a picture and a description of what it does. And you can have, list the offenses. So there's historical information that you can have. There's some really, really interesting stories historically of times when people accidentally, obviously don't think anyone was trying to kill Lincoln's mother with that weed, but especially when identification is a problem. So if everyone is just having home gardens and then there are some weeds that are poisonous that are just growing in the yard next to your garden where the ones that are really great spices and seasonings, and you happen to go outside at night and pick the wrong one, then that could be really dangerous. So that doesn't happen as much now because sadly we don't have as many home gardens. And happily we have access to such great seed resources. So anyway, make a wanted poster. I would love to see your wanted posters and your plant safety posters. I think those would be really fun. So if you want to share those with me, tag me on social media or post them to our Facebook page. Very fun. I would love it. And I will see you next time for our next lesson. Thanks for joining me, guys. Bye.